Hello friends. Today we are going to talk about a very important topic of your syllabus, that is India-China relations. This topic is in general important for every year's exam. But this year, due to some events, this topic has become all the more important. Around February, the world saw the spread of coronavirus which emerged from Wuhan of China, and then it spread all across the world. At one hand, when the world was looking at China to be more apologetic, to be more cooperative and accommodative, China showed the reverse behavior. It launched diplomatic offensive against countries like USA, Australia, and India had to face a territorial military offensive in the Himalayas. And therefore, one cannot choose to ignore this topic for this year's mains exam, whether you're looking at it from the perspective of GS or from the perspective of political science. So today in this session, we'll go into in-depth analysis, because when you look at the news channels, when you look at the newspapers, probably you don't get a depth analysis, you don't get the theoretical perspective of these classes, and the surface level of analysis is not going to help in your mains exam. This talk is going to be important for all those who will be qualifying mains and going to the interview as well, because you will see that if a question is asked on India-China relation, how you have to answer it, not touching upon the sticking points, and how you can answer it satisfactorily. So let's start with the talk. Welcome, ma'am, for this talk. And as we go forward, we would like to start from the history of India-China relations, as both countries became independent around same time, 1947 and 49. The initial relations were very idealistic. We were guided by the ideals of Tagore, and then Nehru. We saw the Panchsheel of Nehru. But we in the both countries faced a full-scale war in 1962, and there was cold peace till the visit of Rajiv Gandhi, and now we see deadly clash in Galwan. So, if I want to ask that if somebody has to find the root cause of this clashes in the history of India-China relation, then what would be your take on that?
Okay. So, first of all, I beg to differ that the initial phase of India-China relations can be described as idealism. Even at the time of Pandit Nehru, there was no confusion at all that China is a threat for India, considering Chinese strategic culture. But how to manage that threat was a question. So there have been two options against a more powerful country. If we go by the wisdom of international relations theories, either you go for balancing or you go for bandwagoning. So in India itself, there were two schools, and if we go by the approach of Sardar Patel's approach was India needs a balancing. But if we go by Nehruvian approach, the approach was that let us not alienate China, let us have a peaceful relations with China. And not just foreign policies are not just always bilateral, there are multiple considerations. And India felt that instead of going for the bloc politics, it is in India's interest to go for non-aligned path. So Nehruvian approach, I will not say idealism, it was among the two options, either you go for balancing or you go for bandwagoning. Now, any policy may work or it may not work. So, how I will trace the origin of India-China territorial dispute? So, I'll say that various explanations can be given. We can look into Kautya's wisdom, which he gives in his Mandal theory, that your neighbor is your natural enemy because both countries have an eye on the same land, and that is why it's very natural that the two giants are going to have clash in future, and that is why the conventional wisdom is there should be a buffer state, and once China occupied Tibet, that buffer has gone and China got a strategic advantage. If I go by other theory, so India, China have been the civilizational states, and they were not looking at each other from strategic calculus. But once they became a nation state, India in 47, China in 49, and the territoriality is a very distinctive concept of a nation state, and the fight for the territorial boundaries have started.
Okay. So, ma'am, let us now look at the ideology part of it, because scholars and the writers, they have been writing that uh, India presents a democratic alternative. India gives an example, a successful example of a democracy of a third world, and therefore this may cause a legitimacy crisis of the Chinese government within the domestic population, and therefore China wants to project, and it projects towards its population, that India is a bad example of democracy. So, do you think that this ideological clash, or this dangerous to the legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party, has been reflected in the current clashes?
Yeah, definitely. If we see that one of the biggest insecurity uh, for China from India, if you talk in terms of material power, China is far ahead. But if we talk in terms of ideational power, I will say India is at an advantage. And in success of democracy in India, and especially in such a uh, unfriendly neighborhood with such a huge diversity, is a big challenge to the legitimacy of the Communist Party of China. And it will be very difficult today or tomorrow. The people in China will ask for democracy, and it will be very difficult for China to convince why Chinese do not deserve democracy. Now, till the time we had Hindu rate of growth and India was comparatively very weak, China was not taking India seriously. But today, India has shown that despite most adverse neighborhood situation, despite extreme problems and diversity, democracy and development can work together in terms of, you can say, purchasing power parity, Chinese economy and India's economy. So obviously it will be difficult for the Communist Party of China to convince that why the Chinese people should not have freedom of speech and expression when India can make it, why not China? So I'll say yes, democracy is a very important concern for them.
So definitely, we can conclude that Dragon is afraid of India's democracy and the human rights that India provides, which is not provided to the Chinese citizens. Ma'am, there was a statement by Foreign Minister Wang Yi. He says that the Chinese dragon and Indian elephant must not fight each other but dance with each other. If India and China come together, it does not make two, it makes 11. So rather, it was a very optimistic statement on his part. And even the present government, the present Modi government, it is known for its realistic approach. But when we see the Wuhan talks, informal talks, or very recently the Mamallapuram informal talks, uh, it one gets this impression that the government started with an idealist approach, but later on realized that probably China is not ready to buy in, China is not ready to accept this. So, do you think that India and China, can they grow peacefully? Is the world big enough to accommodate them? Is China ready to accommodate India? Is China is ready to accept India as an equal partner?
Okay. So first of all, somehow I would like to disagree with the view that the countries can afford to pursue the foreign policies which are idealistic. They may appear to us because we are outsiders And whenever foreign policies are made, whether it is Pandit Nehru or Prime Minister Modi, there will always be an element of pragmatism. Now, the second thing is that in China, talking about elephant and dragon can coexist in Himalayas. So, that is a Chinese narrative, that is a Chinese propaganda. And we can say that as China was looking for time to focus on its internal development, it made sense for China to accommodate India. In India also, we were never having any illusions that China is our friend and China does not have eye on India's territory. We were also very clear. But India was also focusing on its internal balancing, and somehow both India and China, they had different priorities, but we were trying to accommodate each other. But in context of the changed geopolitical scenario, where US is in the state of decline, India is rising, India-US partnership is becoming more and more fortified. China is not finding much strong reasons for some sort of accommodation towards India. Rather, China is thinking that by creating the coercion and the pressure, it can bring India on negotiating table. So, the very reason they should pursue engagement with China has engagement with India has gone.
Okay. Ma'am, whenever we talk about India-China relation, one country which is not untouched with all this is USA. And the world is talking about Thucydides trap being created between USA and China, because USA, especially under Trump under because of Trump's retrenchment policy, USA is being seen as a power which is leaving the world stage. It is the retreating hegemon, and China is aspiring to be the new hegemon. So, I would like you to first explain what is Thucydides trap, and do you subscribe to this view that China and USA are falling into this Thucydides trap, and do you think that India is facing the collateral damage of this trap?
So, Thucydides trap is a concept in international politics, and it has its origin in the work of Thucydides, who has written the history of Peloponnesian War. And the concept is like there are bound to be, he categorizes the countries into two types. One is a status quoist power who is a hegemon at present, and the second is a revisionist power, the emerging hegemon. And because they have a conflicting interest, their relations will end up in the war. Now, what exactly we are saying is, yes, they have already fallen in the Thucydides trap, because both US and China, they are nuclear weapon states. So direct war is not on card as far as the two countries are nuclear. So either they go for proxy war in North Korea or in Iran, or they have gone for trade war. As President of US Trump has said, trade wars are better. So war is already started, and US has always done buck passing towards India, considering India's you can say the feeling of humiliating defeat in 1962 war, and US establishment always see India as the ideal swing state in its policy of Asia rebalance, and India China relations were never bilateral. There was always involvement of US, Russia, Pakistan.
Okay. And then, ma'am, there was an article by C. Rajamohan in Indian Express, and what he was saying is that China wants a multipolar world, but a unipolar Asia. That means they want that they should be the dominating force in Asia, and they keep on talking about this Middle Kingdom that China
Complex.
complex that China was. There was a time under Deng Xiaoping when the policy was bite and height. But with the coming of Xi Jinping, there has been a very vulgar display of power, a diplomatic aggressiveness towards even countries of Southeast Asia, even USA, Australia, and against India. So, do you believe that this narrative of Middle Kingdom and this narrative of Chinese century, is this something that is driving Xi's policy towards the towards China's involvement with the rest of the world?
Actually, I will say that we should never lose the connection between the domestic politics and the international politics. And China has its certain vulnerabilities. And especially if we talk about COVID crisis, there has been huge corruption in Communist Party of China. China has internal problems, lack of democracy. People use this term, pressure cooker syndrome.
Yeah.
So these narratives and discourses like Middle Kingdom complex and China dream is also an attempt by Xi Jinping to divert the attention of the Chinese people towards the real issues and sell them with this dream, use the nationalism card or Chinese exceptionalism card. So Chinese actions at foreign policy, one angle is the domestic angle. The second angle is yes, because now it is very clear in US that China does not simply aim to challenge US hegemony. China want to displace US hegemony. So US is taking all such steps to contain the rise of China. So as China is thinking that this is the time where China should assert its arrival as a major power or a superpower on the world scale. And as you say that when US has announced its arrival after Second World War, US was also not less aggressive. US announced its arrival as a superpower status after Second World War with the explosion of the nuclear weapon in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So maybe it's a natural behavior for any great power, and sometimes in international politics we use one term, megalomania. So there can be many explanations. You can also look into the specific personality of Xi Jinping. You can be comparing him with Hitler, a sort of authoritarian personality. So it's a complex of factors playing the role.
So definitely, China is aspiring for a position of the hegemon. There's no doubt about that. Let us talk about the cost and comparison between India and China. If I can take Sun Tzu's word, he says that if two parties are going at war, the first thing they must do is count the cost. Now, if we compare China with India, clearly the advantage lies with China. Let us talk about China's military expenditure. So it is 261 billion. This is the data of 2019, and India's expenditure is just 71 billion. So it is clearly more than 4 times that of India. Even if you talk about the size of economy, the GDP size, it is 4.78 times higher than India. So there's clearly India and China are not at the same level. The scholars also say that for India, China might be a primary danger, primary problem, but for China, India is not the primary problem, it is a secondary problem. What they say is that if India combines with USA, then it becomes problem for China, not alone. So if we take a very realist view and compare the military and the economic power, then where do you think that India lies in front of China?
So definitely I'll say there is a big gap in India's comprehensive power and Chinese comprehensive power. And today China is next to US. China is competing with US, and there is a big gap. But I will also say that we are talking in terms of potential power. The real power is always tested in the battleground. And in the battle, we cannot say that India has no strategic advantages. If China has a advantageous position on the land India does have a advantageous position on the sea, we also have our cards. And why should we think that China is bound to win? It is not necessary that history repeats, and I am sure that the situation have changed considerably in terms of our preparedness, in terms of the morale of our forces, in terms of the morale of the public also. So first of all, I will not accept that this gap in the potential power is necessarily going for India's defeat in the real battle. Now, the second thing is, we are not opting for the battle, but in order to avoid war, we are preparing ourselves. And we should not forget this old rule in international politics, that war is a regular feature of the international politics, and it is said that either you are in the war or in the preparation of war. So war is not a matter of choice. War is a destiny. We have to be prepared for war, and I believe, certainly believe, that the potential capacity need not to be actual, and who will win and who will lose will have to be seen in the battlefield. And before we are defeated, why should we accept that India is bound? And today you can say India has consolidated its position, India has strengthened its deterrence, India has consolidated its strategic partnership with US, with Australia, with other major countries, Japan, and let us see.
So, ma'am, you were talking about the battleground, and you also said that India is in a better position if we see the maritime sphere. And there was also an article by Happy Mon Jacob in the Hindu, and what he told was that if you compare the territorial strength, then China is at an advantageous position. But in maritime, India has the advantage because of its strategic location in the Indian Ocean. Secondly, what he said was that the Pakistan China axis is more strong on the land because of the upcoming CPEC as well. And it's not yet consolidated in the maritime sphere. So, do you think that it's time for India to shift its focus from territorial, from continental towards maritime sphere, if we in the maritime sphere, especially when we see it in the context of the consolidation of Quad? So, do you think that it's right time to give equal importance to the maritime sphere in handling China?
So, first of all, we are already giving greater importance to the maritime sphere because we have a natural advantage. Now, among multiple reasons behind the Galwan clashes, one reason is that China would like India, that India should divert its attention from and its resources from maritime sphere to the continental sphere. So it can be a China's game plan also, that we are giving so much focus on maritime sphere. China would like to divert India's attention. Now I will say, yes, one should always try to consolidate one's strength. So India should not leave the focus of maritime, but we can also not leave the focus on the continent too. And the government is taking adequate step
Infrastructure
in
is
the
being developed.
yes, in the last few years the pace of infrastructure development has increased, and that has actually alarmed China. We have developed mountain corps. So fine, but try to overcome your weakness and try to consolidate your strength.
Okay. So, till now we were talking about India's perspective towards China, but there's also some kind of dilemma in China's foreign policy circle as well.
Yes.
There's a school which thinks that India is troubling China by coming together with USA, and it's time for China to teach India a lesson on the borders, or if not with an explicit war, then at least by internal weakening of India by supporting the separatist groups, this by supporting the Maoists. But there's another school in China which believes that India is a big power, and it should not be unnecessarily provoked. And China should concentrate on its internal development, and it should not provoke India. So, what do you think, that it is just a myth, or according to you, China is equally worried about India? What is their perspective towards India?
See, whenever we make a foreign policy or a strategic policy, you have to think from multiple perspectives, and there is also one perspective that India is weak and it's time for China to teach India a lesson. But I will go with the second perspective. And today, with the economic rise of China, with the economic rise of India, with the recognition of India as a major power, the net security provider, the consolidation, like the Western countries, even European Union has brought its strategic approach towards China, Vietnam, Indonesia, ASEAN. Today, world is also looking at India, and that is definitely destabilizing to China. If any country can be a direct challenge to Chinese hegemony in Asia Pacific, because US is quite a far away. So that is India, and China's nervousness, I will say Galwan clashes are China's nervousness, and definitely China is not taking India lightly. They are taking the developments, India's growth uh, with utmost seriousness. And Galwan's one interpretation is like it is Doklam, or Galwan is like testing the waters. So I'll go with the second theory.
Okay. And considering the secrecy that China maintained on the number of casualties on their side, it is very comfortably be concluded that China has got a good grip of India's strength, and it wants to take its time. So,
And both, I'll want to say that in Doklam as well as in this Pangong
yeah,
Lake,
fine.
China has got the idea about India's determination, about India's preparedness, and they must have got it very clear that India of 2020 is not India of 1962, and they cannot take it so lightly.
Okay. So, ma'am, we'll now see that from now onwards, as we move, what should be India's approach towards China? India-China relation, or in particular, and in general, the India's relation with other countries also, it is considered that processes dominate substantive outcome. We keep on talking without getting any substantive outcome. But things have changed. Xi Jinping in China and India's leadership is also, especially the Ministry of External Affairs being under Dr. Jaishankar and under the Prime Minister Modi, things have changed and leadership wants a substantial outcome of the solution. So, what, according to you, should be the approach of India going forward for China?
See, being outside the policy making circle, being outside the military and defense structure, it is very easy for us to say a lot of process and no outcome. So I'll say that is not the case, but everything is not in our control. So Indian diplomats, with the limited resources, with the limited manpower we have done well. And yes, it is always going to be a process. Now, the change in India's approach towards China. So, first of all, we also need to understand what was our approach with respect to China so far. So, after 1962 war, first of all, for the security, we relied on deterrence. The second thing is because China, there is no point India enters into some sort of war again, because wars are never beneficial. So we would have preferred engagement with China. So the second aspect of India's policy was engagement, both the summit level engagement or the political engagement and economic engagement. And somewhere we were trying that if we can find a peaceful road to Beijing. But now we see that neither in there is no reciprocity on the part of China if we talk in terms of economic engagement. So we thought that since this policy of economic engagement is not working, let us go for decoupling, and we have already started during COVID, and now India's decision to stay out of it. Next thing is summit level diplomacy. It has also not worked. We tried with informal summits also. So instead of that, and initially India was staying away from Quad, so now we are changing the rules of engagement. We are almost in a way we can say we are in a sort of a quasi alliance with US, and India is no more moving in that ideal form of non-alignment. So definitely now our policy means always a set of actions and not just one action. So first is look for a scope of engagement if possible, if China respond. Second thing is look for Chinese vulnerability, because if China is trying to promote internal divisions in India, be it in Kashmir or be it in Nagaland and other regions, China also has its soft belly in Tibet, in Xinjiang, in Taiwan, or you can say in Hong Kong. Look for that. Go for internal balancing, go for external balancing. Now, the success of Quad to large extent will depend upon India's willingness to counter China's assertiveness and I'll say aggressiveness.
So, to conclude, we can say that, as ma'am told, that in international politics you are either at war or in the preparation of war. And if one word could define international politics, it is anarchy. And we clearly see that, especially when the multilateral institutions are somehow losing their legitimacy, UN not performing to its level, to the expectation, and other multilateral institutions also losing their legitimacy. It's time India should look to strengthen itself. And following this policy, probably India is going for the India just signed all the foundational agreement, the most recent being BECA. India participated in the consolidation of port. India invited Australia in the Malabar exercises, and therefore India's leadership is very much conscious of this fact that a strong country can survive in this international politics, especially if you are living near to a geographical giant like China. So, thank you all of you for giving us your time, and we'll come up with more sessions like this. Thank you, ma'am, for your time. Thank
Thank
you.
you.